Hello everybody and welcome to my review of Charlton Athletics 2023-24 summer transfer window. We do this every single season, reviewing every transfer window, and you guys really seem to enjoy my rants about our windows, and we are doing it again today for the window that slams shut this Friday just gone. And yeah, bit of a chaotic one, we'd have to say. A pretty interesting one. A lot has happened, a lot of players have come in, a lot of players have left, and overall, I'll probably say my thoughts now. All things considering, with what's happened with the club this past month, we've done fairly well. I think we have done fairly well this window, considering what's been going on, with the whole managerial situation and the ownership kerfuffle that's gone on recently. But I think on the whole, we have to say, all things considering, we have done quite well this summer. So, without wasting any more time, let's get into the review of the transfer window, and we will begin, as we did last season, by discussing all of the players that have left the club, whether that be released from the retain list at the start of the season, or the end of last season, should I say, expiring loans from the previous season, and then players that have subsequently left the club during the pre-season and during the transfer window. I do hope that this is the last time Macauley Bonne's name is mentioned on this channel. He was the first name on the players released at the end of last season, and rightly so. I don't know why we decided to go back in for him. I don't know why he was our number one striker target for last season when we desperately needed one, and we actually failed to sign him in the summer of last year, and we got him in January. And he said the whole thing like, oh, obviously there was the controversy surrounding the post that he did when the move fell through back in the summer, and he claimed that it wasn't about the club and yada yada yada. I don't want to go too much into it because I think it's a load of nonsense, but I think, yeah, his performances on the pitch and his attitude that he showed towards the club, especially towards the end of his time, just showed exactly what he felt about this football club, really. And ultimately he spent more times offside than he did shots on target, so rightly so was moved on, and he has found his way to Gillingham. And that's obviously quite funny when you take into consideration the other targets that Gillingham were interested in, which we'll get into a bit later. But he's ended up there and has ended himself in a bit of controversy following the car accident that happened recently involving him, two other former Charlton players, Johnny Williams and George Lapsley, and two other players as well. It was reported that no one was hurt, which obviously is a great thing. I'm glad that everybody got out unscathed. But yeah, in terms of Bonne's time at Charlton, as I said, hope to never cover him on this channel again. Versatile midfielder and defender Sean Clare was released as well, and he has found his way back to League One, signing for Wigan Athletic. I think that this is one that we will come to regret, to be honest with you. I've said this a fair few times. I felt that Clare was the one player out of all of the permanent players that we released that we should never have let go. I felt that his versatility would have been something that we'd have benefited from this season. Someone that can play in the centre of midfield, someone that can play it at centre-back, and proved that very well in the back five that we played under Johnny Jackson. And obviously at the start of the season we deployed a back five this year and in pre-season, which is something that I felt Clare would have been more than accustomed to, and can also play right back. And I'm really disappointed to the fact that he has left the club. I don't think he was as bad as some of the Charlton fans made him out to be. I felt that he struggled last season on some occasion. He got caught out a few times defensively, but nevertheless, I felt he was someone that offered something going forward and also could do something solid defensively, and would have been, in my opinion, a decent player to have still at the club. Alex Gilbey returned from his loan spell at Stevenage last season and was released as well following 3 years at the club. And yeah, another one that unfortunately falls into Macauley Bonne's category of the dickheads, we'd have to say, that Dean Holden had at the start of the window. Of course, there was the controversy that surrounded Stevenage and their chant, their anti-Charlton chant, of course, after they got promoted, which is still confusing even now. I don't know what rivalry Stevenage were trying to force with us back then or why that even came about. But anyway, Gilbey would have to fall into that category of the no dickheads policy, really. He had to go, really. Unfortunately, his performances were very underwhelming, didn't really do anything in the 3 years that he was here. He obviously came out recently when he re-signed for MK Dons. He obviously has gone back to MK Dons, that he regretted making the move to Charlton, which hardly surprised me. And of course, his departing statement from the club showed us exactly how he felt about this club. He didn't really give a toss, and neither did the fans about him leaving. Our third choice goalkeeper, Nathan Harness, has also departed the club in search for regular minutes. The 23-year-old needed to go out and get more minutes. He was never going to break into our team this season, and he has actually joined Alex Gilbey at MK Dons this season, which I was quite surprised considering he struggled to get games at National League level. But nevertheless, I do wish him all the best in League Two, and hopefully he can get himself some regular minutes and kickstart his career. After spending perhaps 3 years too many at this club, Ryan Ennis was released, and he has found his way to League Two as well, but this time with Forest Green Rovers helping out their defensive line, coming off the back of a shocking League One campaign last year. Inniss will have to go down as one of the most frustrating players I've ever seen play for this club. On his day, I do still believe he is a fantastic defender that can do a job at League One level, but unfortunately, injury woes and completely losing his head and a poor suspension record is what's let Inniss down. It is the definition of a defensive liability, and ultimately we did need to let him go. And the final player to be released from the club following the expiration of their contracts was, of course, homegrown talent Albie Morgan. He was let go after many, many years of this football club. I think he was here since the age of like 8 or 9, and he has departed the Addicks and found his way back to League One, signing for Blackpool. I was quite surprised, really, that Morgan found his way still in League One, to be honest with you, let alone a competitive League One team. I would have thought that he possibly would have stayed closer to home, or maybe would have taken a step down and gone to League Two, but no, he stayed in League One and he's gone to Blackpool, so fair play to him. I think ultimately it was the right time to move him on. I felt the past 2 years, while there was a lot of pressure put on his shoulders, of course, taking the number 10, I felt that he massively under-delivered. I felt he was really inconsistent and was just ultimately letting us down and needed to make a move away from the club. Contrary to belief, I actually did like Morgan when he played for the club. I think I've said it a few times. I did like Morgan when he played for the club, and it was really nice to see him, you know, progress through the academy and get regular minutes and break into the first team. And I think deservedly so. He got a chance towards the back end of his Charlton career. You know, when we got relegated from the Championship, he was given a lot more big of a role and obviously won the Young Player of the Year that year. And then ultimately the last 2 seasons, just he hadn't done enough really. He was just too inconsistent, and sadly it was time for him to move on. But I do wish him all the best at Blackpool, and it would just be bloody typical if Blackpool do end up getting the best out of him and he turns into the player that we all thought he was going to be. Steven Sessegnon returned to Fulham following his loan spell, was then released by the Premier League club and has since linked up with Sean Clare at Wigan Athletic. Fantastic pickup again by Wigan. I do kind of think that he could have been someone that we could have brought back in, especially considering our lack of depth in the left-back department, in my opinion. We'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, Sessegnon, in my opinion, will stand out as one of our better performers last year. Really, really good on the left-hand side. Linked up really well with the wingers. Someone that got forward and overlapped runs and put balls into the box. Wasn't afraid to attack and also did very well defensively. Of course, scored that incredible goal against Accrington Stanley, which won Goal of the Year. Todd Kane returned to Coventry City and has since been released by the Sky Blues and is currently a free agent as of recording. Kane played only 5 games for the club last season, in the second half of last season, and I actually didn't realise he played 5 games. I thought he played probably 2. Gavin Kilkenny returned to Bournemouth following his loan spell and struggling to break into the Addicks team, much like most of the players that joined us really in January besides Michael Hector. He couldn't break into a mid-table mediocre League One side, so I guess that speaks volumes, and as far as I'm aware, he is still at Bournemouth, so I don't know where his future is going to lie. Matt Penny returned to Ipswich Town following his disastrous loan spell and is currently down his local job centre as a free agent and a player that I am so confused as to why we signed him, to be honest with you. He was spending the first half of the season with Scottish Premier League club Motherwell, where Motherwell fans were saying he was their best player, which is, I think, speaks volumes of the quality of the SPL, to be honest with you, for the fact that Matt Penny was their best player. And the star boy from last season, Jessurun Rak-Sakyi, has returned to Crystal Palace, where he is still at the Premier League club. He didn't actually make a move out on loan this summer, which I was quite surprised, but he is making regular appearances on the bench for Palace, and I think did come off against Arsenal, I think it was last Monday. So it is very nice to see him getting some minutes in the Premier League. Obviously, he was a fantastic player for us last season. Need I say more than that, to be honest with you? One Player of the Year, and deservedly so, despite him being Palace. For his first season in professional football, 15 goals and 8 assists is an absolutely incredible record, and I will be keeping a very fond eye of his career over the next few years. I genuinely do think we've got a future England talent. Ghanaian goalkeeper Joe Wollacott, who departed the club after spending 12 months with the Addicks. He has since joined Scottish Premiership club Hibernian, which made a lot of sense, to be honest with you. Wollacott struggled to get back into the first team. As a matter of fact, he didn't get back into the first team at all after his injury back in November. It was very clear that going into the season, Dean Holden favoured Maynard Brewer as the number 1, and Wollacott wanted to get regular minutes and wanted to keep his spot in the Ghana national team, and that is why he did make the move to the SPL, where he will definitely get minutes at Hibs, and I do wish him all the best there. Real shame, really, because I think Wollacott was a really good keeper for us and a solid League One keeper to have going into this season, but sadly his injury just completely ruined his Charlton career. Sam Lavelle made a permanent move to League One side Carlisle United. He was in the final 12 months of his contract, and it looks very likely that he was going to be moved on, and he did find his way up north, signing for Carlisle. I think a solid signing for Carlisle if they can keep him fit, because ultimately injuries did plague him at his time with Charlton as well. But I do think that in 2021-22, despite his injuries, I actually felt he had a solid season coming over from Morecambe. Last season was a bit of a disaster for him, to be honest with you. Not only could he not stay fit, but he also could not put in the performances that were required. Had some decent performances, especially in the Carabao Cup, where I will say he did put on the badge with pride and got stuck in and made some solid defensive performances, but that was it really. He went out on loan in the second half of last season to Burton Albion, where he struggled to get minutes there, again due to injury, and ultimately I think it was the right time for him to move on. We needed to strengthen the defensive line. Aaron Henry has made a temporary departure from the Addicks, signing for League Two side Crawley Town on loan for the season. The right decision for me. I felt Henry was going to struggle to make minutes this season, and I felt that he needed to get that extra experience and test himself. And while he has moved to a club that are an absolute circus off the field, I think overall it is a good move for him. I think he will get regular minutes there. Mandela Egbo made a permanent exit to League Two side Colchester United, linking up with his former manager Ben Garner. Of course, has worked with him at the likes of Swindon and Charlton last season, and is now reunited with the coach at Colchester United. I was quite surprised when it first came out, but I'm kind of not anymore now, due to his, well, again, another player that struggled badly with injuries last season, a player that struggled with injuries throughout his entire career, really. In terms of performances, I actually felt he played really well. I felt that he was a player that got forward really well in the fullback department, also got backs well and defended really well, put in crunching challenges and also put balls into the box. I felt that he was going to be a player that we could have benefited from this season, but sadly, I think he either fell out of favour with Holden, clearly, as he favoured the prodigy Nathan Asimwe, of course, coming through the ranks this year, and of course, struggling with injuries from last year. It was no surprise, really, that Egbo was moved on, and he has departed and signed for Colchester. I do wish Egbo all the best. Obviously, a fantastic character off the pitch, and also a decent player on the field when he was fit, in my opinion, anyway. Jack Payne joined the many list of former Charlton players that find themselves at Milton Keynes Dons. He has joined them on a season-long loan, which I think will most likely mark the end of his Charlton career, with him being in the final 12 months of his contract. I've said it on social media a number of times. I think Jack Payne will go down as one of the most overhated players to play for Charlton recently. Yes, the performances this season have probably not been to standard, and ultimately probably not good enough to start in our team this season, but I really don't think he was as bad as people made him out to be. I felt that he would have been a decent option off the bench, in my opinion. Someone that likes to come off the bench, really look to make an impact, use his pace, looks to have a shot, and scored a decent amount of goals and provided a decent amount of assists last season. I really did not think he was as bad as people made him out to be, but as I said, it is looking very likely now that this will be his Charlton career over. So I do wish him all the best at MK Dons. I liked Payne at his time at Charlton, which is quite controversial because, like I said, the guy, in my opinion, I think is very overhated. But I do wish him all the best at League Two level. I think he will flourish at that level, to be honest with you. And I think MK Dons have got a decent midfielder on their hands. Zach Mitchell also made a temporary switch away from the club, signing with Ben Garner's Colchester United alongside Mandela Egbo. He joins them on a season-long loan. Again, like Aaron Henry, a player that I think really needed the experience. I think he will do very well at Colchester. Decent move for both parties. Wish him the best over there for the season. And the final player to leave the club this transfer window on the final hours of deadline day was winger Diolang Jaisimi. It wasn't actually rumoured of a Jaisimi move. It came seemingly out of nowhere, but a move that desperately needed to happen. He has signed for Scottish Premiership side St Johnstone on loan for the season. The right move, final 12 months of his contract. That will probably mean the end of his Charlton career, and rightly so, to be honest with you. Really, really disappointing spell at the Addicks, and that is putting it lightly, to be honest with you. A player that really just offered nothing since coming to the club from Swindon Town back in 2021. So those are all of the players that have left the club this summer. I would like to wish all of the players departing the club this summer all the best in their future careers, unless you are Macaulay Bonne and Alex Gilbey. No, I'm joking. I do wish them all the best in their future career, despite their very poor performances for the Addicks. You can tell I'm bitter about them departing the club, but it's for the greater good. Shut it! And it is also worth covering this as well, but we did see a departure from the managerial side, as Dean Holden was relieved of his duties as men's first team manager, as well as Danny Sender as men's first team coach, I believe he was anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if I've got that wrong. And also Glyn Schimmel departed the club as well as the men's first team goalkeeper coach. And yeah, I said it in the video before our match reaction to the Fleetwood game, and I still stand by it. Holden's sacking was very premature and a stupid decision, very much like Ben Garner. I ultimately don't think he received the correct backing. He didn't receive the time that his contract suggested. Yes, his team selections and tactics were very questionable going into this season, but ultimately I think the problem at the moment is way bigger than the manager. I think ultimately the ownership, again, just didn't back him correctly. I do wish Holden all the best in his future career. An absolutely fantastic personality, a really nice guy, and I think a person that really should have been given more time to build his system and to, you know, see where he can take this club. Now, without any further hesitation, it is time to get into the players that have joined the club. 11 joined us in total over this summer transfer window, and let's go through all of them now, beginning with signing number 1, as we did complete the signing of Luton Town goalkeeper Harry Isted. Following the departure of Joe Wallacott, it was very clear that we needed to bring in a new goalkeeping option. Of course, we released Nathan Harness, and realistically, we couldn't have Molyneux, I think it is, a academy goalkeeper, as our second choice keeper due to his inexperience. I felt that we needed to have that extra cover in the keeper department and needed the 2 solid League One goalkeepers. And I think it's very clear on paper that we have got that with Isted, especially from his time at Barnsley. He comes off a red-hot form season in the second half of last year with Barnsley, where he established himself as their number 1, pulled off some ridiculous saves, particularly in the playoff final, where despite them losing, he did paint himself in glory with his performances. In terms of this season so far, I think it has taken time for him to adjust. I felt he had a really shaky and disappointing pre-season, particularly with his distribution and playing the ball out of his feet. Of course, the EFL Cup game was his first start for the club against Newport, where he didn't paint himself in glory or help himself whatsoever by conceding 3 goals to a League 2 side. He has got regular minutes now, starting the last 2 games at League 1 level against Oxford and Fleetwood, where I don't think he's had an awful lot to do. I'm still not entirely decided on Isted just yet, but of course it is very early days, and ultimately on paper we have got 2 very solid League One keepers at this level in Isted and Maynard Brewer. Signing number 2 was in the form of Cambridge United centre-back Lloyd Jones, who joined the club upon the expiration of his deal at the U's. Again, I think a solid pickup. I think a solid pickup on a free transfer. If we're going off accolades and statistics, we would have to say that Jones was Cambridge's best player last year. He picked up a clean sweep of their Player of the Year awards last year. A really dominant centre-back who's good at winning headers in both boxes, someone that is very aerially dominant. And again, I think I'd have to say alongside Isted, a player that I think grew into it. He didn't really have the best of starts in the first opening games, but as the season has gone on and as the last few games have come in, I think Jones has established himself as a pretty decent defender. I think he likes to get stuck in, proves to be very solid, as I said, in the air, and I think long-term will prove to be a very solid introduction to the side and definitely an upgrade on Ryan Innes. So yeah, I do like the look of Jones so far. As I said, that imposing centre-back that we've desperately needed. Signing number 3 needs absolutely no introduction whatsoever and needs absolutely no explanation for me to tell you how good of a signing it is. It is, of course, Cheltenham Town striker Alfie May, perhaps one of the most, if not the most sought-after League One player this summer. At one point, it looked like it was very likely that he was going to be heading to Gillingham, of course, devastating for us, but he did a U-turn seemingly at the very last minute and made the move to Charlton, which is why I said it's quite funny now that they've ended up with Macaulay Bonne. They went from Alfie May all the way to Macaulay Bonne. Just such a massive parallel from one extreme to the other, really. But yeah, May, I think, needs no explanation, really. The goal scorer that we desperately needed and a real statement of intent, of course, is now firing on all cylinders for us now. 4 goals in his last 3 games, 4 goals in 6 matches. He is definitely finding his feet after what was a pretty shaky start, we'd have to say. The tactic that we play with him, even now, even with the 2 goals he scored over the weekend, the fact that we continuously punt the ball long to him is just stupid. We're using it wrong, and I think the first goal that we scored shows exactly how we need to be using May. But even with the long balls that we play to him, it shows how good he is off the ball. You know, his work ethic off the ball is fantastic. Constantly pressing defenders. The fact that he can make those runs in behind. Really excited to see what Alfie May can do over the rest of this season and the more goals that he will score for us. Fantastic addition and the real goal scorer that we did need. And I think statement of intent signing can also be said about our 4th addition in the form of Ipswich Town midfielder Panush Kamara, the Guinea-Bissau midfielder joining the club on a season-long loan. Only featured once for Ipswich at League One level due to being ruled out for pretty much all of the season with quite a bad injury. So there was that to worry about, and especially this season as well, because Kamara has had his injury problems. He has struggled with a foot injury fairly recently. Apparently, he is now match fit, so that is obviously very good. But we know how good Kamara can be at this level from his time at Plymouth. He is that box-to-box midfielder that we have desperately needed. You know, someone that can get in those crunching challenges and push forward and create attacking chances. Technically, on the ball, he is phenomenal to watch. You know, what he can do with the ball at his feet is absolutely brilliant. And, you know the saying, you shouldn't fall in love with a lone player. I think I have already fallen in love with Kamara. The passion that he's shown for this club already is admirable. Obviously, the mistake that he made against Peterborough when he came out and apologised for it shows how much he does, you know, want to play for this club. And I mean, it makes sense really, because he struggled with minutes last year and he desperately wants to get minutes under his belt. And obviously it must be frustrating considering he's been out of an injury already, albeit not as long as it was last year. But again, I think Kamara falls into the Alfie May category of a statement of intent signing, someone that on his day could be one of, if not the best central midfielder at this level. Signings number 5 and 6 came in a 24-hour period in the signings of Blackburn Rovers fullback Tayo Idun and Burton Albion midfielder Terry Taylor. Of course, the first signings being made under the Global Football Partners era, both requiring fees. Obviously not as massive fees as some fans maybe would like to say, but ultimately the fees that we have paid for these guys are pretty decent bargains. Starting with Idun, who joins the club on a permanent basis from Blackburn Rovers after he was told by John Dale Thomason that he wasn't going to be part of their first team plans. Obviously been a very frustrating time for him in the Championship. Obviously really disappointing spell at Blackburn, but his time at Lincoln is obviously how many League One fans will remember him, as a very solid addition to their team and a very solid player that helped them guide them to the playoff final in 2021, of course losing to Blackpool. And I'm going to go out and say it right now, despite his troublesome period in the Championship, Idun has been one of my most impressive performers this season. I think he's played really, really well. He's linked up really well going forward. He's made a decent partnership with Blackett Taylor. The two link up really well. Idun does like to push forward, get balls into the box and attack. Someone that we saw last season with Stephen Sessegnon. So you could say the perfect replacement really, or maybe an identical replacement as he's come in and done exactly the same thing. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Idun can do over the course of a full season. I've really liked him so far. As for Terry Taylor, who of course comes in from Burton Albion for a compensation fee of 150 grand. He of course turned down a contract at the Brewers. The 22-year-old Welsh international had been attracting Championship interest. I think the likes of Plymouth and Swansea were linked with him. So that does show how highly rated the player is and how good he can be and how good he could turn out to be, obviously signing a 3-year contract. Thus far, it's fair to say we haven't seen it so far. I think his performances on the pitch have not been that great, but then again, I think he's, struggling to get up to speed. He has coming off the back of an injury from last year. He was obviously ruled out for the rest of the season from February onwards. On paper, he is the set-piece specialist that we've needed, someone that can put balls into the box, both from corners and free kicks and whatnot. But so far, from his performances that we have seen from him, we obviously haven't seen it. But then again, I think Taylor is more of a long-term project. As I said, he's only 22. I'm going to hold my judgment off with Taylor so far. He's clearly not up to speed at the moment and obviously needs to get himself back up to speed and get fit. But hopefully over the course of his Charlton career, we do see a decent player. And then, of course, after the signing of Terry Taylor, there was a prolonged period before we did sign another player. I did say it. I think it took 4 weeks before we signed our next player. We waited until the season to start. Our overall quality of the squad was exposed and we were humbled, to be honest with you, was where injuries started to pile up already. The depth in the team was clearly not good enough, and I don't know why we left it so late. That's the only criticism I have really of this window, why we left it so late to bring in another player. But eventually we did sign someone after, as I said, a long period of time, and it was in the form of Wolverhampton Wanderers winger Chem Campbell, who joins the club on a season-long loan. Campbell did spend last season with Wycombe Wanderers, the second half of last season. I do believe he played 17 games for the Chairboys, getting 3 goals from out wide. According to Wycombe fans, he did really well in that time there. He played very, very well. He also made 5 appearances for Wolves in the Premier League last year, which was quite surprised to see. He must have come off the bench, to be honest with you. I can't imagine him starting any games, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments below if I am wrong. But yeah, the 20-year-old has really come in and made an impact so far. 2 games for the Addicts so far against Oxford and Fleetwood. 2 assists, 1 assist in both games. He has definitely impressed me in the game that I saw him play on Saturday. He looked very, very lively, someone that liked to get forward. The ball he played to Alfie May was sensational. Of course, playing in the middle of the pitch, he was played in the midfield of a 4-3-3, so it clearly shows there's versatility there. He can play on either side of either wing. He can play through the middle as well, and I think we are definitely going to benefit from him, especially from the first 2 games we've seen. It could be another case of me falling in love with another lone player. He really has been an impressive addition to the team so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do over the course of a full season. And then, of course, we get into the absolute chaos that was deadline day. Well, I did not expect much from us, to be honest with you, on this day due to our lack of a manager. I didn't think we were going to be able to bring anyone in. We're not going to have that pull factor, a fairly unattractive club to come to due to our poor starts of the season, and obviously, as I said, not having a manager. But according to Richard Cooley, our recruitment strategy was unaffected by the manager change, and that definitely proved to be the case as we signed 4 players on deadline day. I must say, really surprised that we were able to get 4 in. I honestly thought we weren't going to get any, or maybe 1 or 2, but we got 4. And I must say, we did fill in the gaps that were desperately needed in the squad, as we did manage to bring in MK Dons right back Tenai Watson, Luton Town midfielder Louis Watson on a season-long loan, James Abankwa on loan from Udinese, a centre-half coming in, Republic of Ireland under-19 international, and Manchester City striker Slobodan Tedic also joining us on a season-long loan. So let's rattle through these now. Obviously, I did hold off talking about these guys In the video, I talked about Dean Holden getting sacked in my comeback video from holiday and the match reaction to the Fleetwood game. So we're going to go into a bit more detail of these four, beginning with the first one, Tenai Watson. And I think this one is the one I'm probably most excited about, to be honest with you. Of course, the only one of the players coming in on deadline day, coming in on a permanent transfer, signing a 2-year contract following his departure from MK Dons. He turned down a new contract at their side, and dare I say, potentially on paper anyway, an upgrade on Mandela Egbo, purely based off the fact he has played more minutes at this level. He's been a regular at MK Dons over the last 2 years, 29 appearances in 2021-22, getting himself 2 goals and 1 assist from fullback. I remember him tearing us a new one when we played against him last season. He was obviously part of that team that made the playoffs last season, a side that probably should have got promoted automatically, but of course finished third and ended up bottling playoffs. And then a season later, getting relegated. 30 games for them last season. So he's been a regular at League One level, which I think is exactly what we needed. And he is that player that can play very well as a fullback. He can also, as a wingback, sorry. He can also play on the left-hand side as well. So there's that versatility there. 26 years of age is the right age, still got age on his side. And like I said, on paper, could be an upgrade on Egbo due to the fact he's been more experienced at this level and has been able to keep himself somewhat fit. As I say, 29 games and 30 games over the course of 2 separate seasons. It's pretty good, decent going in terms of minutes. So yeah, I'm excited to see how Watson can do. I'm looking forward to seeing him play. Desperately needed to relieve the pressure off of Nathan Asimwe's shoulders. Of course, a very young player who I will say has done well coming into the side, but it was very clear he needed that cover, and the inexperience is starting to show with some of his performances, particularly on Saturday. I think while he grew into the game with confidence, I felt he really, really looked shaky, and I think he needs that more experienced option to cover for him and also help him out in his game, and I think Watson will come in clutch there. The second player was, of course, Louis Watson. We've got 2 Campbells in the squad, and now we've got 2 Watsons in the form of Louis, a Irish international, under-21 international, I do believe, and I don't know what to make with this one, to be honest with you. Of course, coming in as Jack Payne's replacement, and it was obviously heavily indicated that Conor McGrandles would be leaving the club at this transfer window, but he has picked up a fresh injury, which hasn't actually been reported by the club. Richard Cooley reported it, that he has suffered an injury that will take him out for a period of time, which is why he didn't leave the club in the summer, which is why we have ended up signing Louis Watson. Now, I think this is the best chance for Louis to break into the team due to the injuries that we have, obviously to the likes of Fraser, Kamara struggling with fitness at the moment, Taylor not being able to, or Taylor getting up to speed, should I say, recovering from his injury, McGrandles being a fresh injury. Now is the time for Watson to break into the team and to show his worth. And he does come in as a highly rated player, of course, come through the West Ham Academy, made the move to Derby in 2020, I do believe. He was handed his debut in the Championship under Wayne Rooney, so obviously exciting to be under his guidance. In total, played 13 games at Championship level over a 2-year period, where he eventually made his move to Luton Town last summer, where he played 5 games in the Championship side that, of course, won promotion historically to the Premier League. He's still inexperienced at the age of 22. Of course, Luton fans do rate him highly. I've spoken to a couple of Luton fans when we signed him, and they said that he is a decent player if he can get minutes, which I am worried about. I am worried as to whether he is going to get regular minutes at this level. So I am concerned in regards of his lack of experience, but ultimately, I said it on social media, I saw so many people moaning about our new signings. We need to judge them through our own eyes, and we need to see how they do in our shirt. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Watson can bring to the team. Obviously, another option in midfield that I felt we did need with the departures of Payne. Signing number 3, and perhaps the most exciting out of all of them, of course, being James Abankwah, who comes in from overseas. Our first player coming over from overseas since 2021, of course, in the form of FC Midtjylland striker Ronnie Schwartz, and we all know how that turned out. But I do think there is a lot of excitement with this one because it's in the centre-back department, which has ultimately been absolutely shocking this season. And that is putting it brutally honestly, and perhaps even putting it lightly, to be honest with you. Defensively, we have been a sham so far this season. And based off our centre-back's current performances, Abankwah could maybe walk into the starting 11, to be honest with you. But I did see some people moaning about this signing in regards to his lack of experience. And while obviously there is a lot of excitement there, I do have to agree, because ultimately he hasn't played that many minutes. Of course, he come through the St Patrick's Athletic Academy, and that is where he made, obviously, a name for himself. He played 20 games over the course of 2 seasons in the Irish Premier League, and that, of course, earned him his move to Udinese in the Serie A in Italy for a record fee in the Irish Premier League, apparently. Abankwah played 2 games for Udinese last season, of course, one of them coming against Juventus, who obviously comes in with a huge pedigree, very highly rated player, obviously a Republic of Ireland under-19 international, and of course coming through Udinese, who rate him very highly. And then finally, we come to our final deadline day signing coming in the last few hours of deadline day, and that of course was in the form of Serbian striker Slobodan Tedic, who joins the club on loan from Manchester City. Of course, it's very well documented that we did need a striker coming into this season, of course, due to the injuries of Miles Lieberman, which thank God he's now recovered from and is now back in the team, and Chukwuemeka, who I very much doubt we'll ever see him again if he does get himself back fit. The only two strikers we had going into the season was Alfie May, new signing, statement of intent, need I say more, and Daniel Kanu, who, while he's done very well and has taken his chance very well, he's inexperienced and we can't put too much pressure on his shoulders, and that is where Tedic comes in. Now, of course, we had been linked with a number of other strikers in this transfer window. You know, the likes of Clark Harris was linked, Sam Nombe we was linked with, Sam Cosgrove we was linked with, and a number of other strikers as well. You know, the likes of Kyan Atete from Cardiff we was linked with, and Freddie Ladapo. Tedic spent the second half of last season on loan with Barnsley, where he made 24 appearances, scoring 4 goals and getting 1 assist. I saw a lot of people moaning about this signing, you know, oh, why have we signed him? You know, he's not going to be a goal scorer. Ultimately, I mean, I could be wrong with this. We all could be wrong with this. Tedic could, you know, he could fire on all cylinders and he could score goals for us. He could be a decent goal scorer. Ultimately, I think we've brought him in to help Alfie May score goals. You know, be that target man that can bring the ball down and hold up the play, and so May can make those runs in behind and latch on and score goals. I mean, Tedic is an absolute man mountain. I think he's like, what, 6'5" or something like that. He's absolutely stupidly tall, ridiculously tall. And he's, I mean, judging by his record, I mean, he's not going to be, you know, the goal scorer that we obviously want, and not going to be the goal scorer that we think he's going to be. Could be wrong, you know, as I said, he could score goals for us, but ultimately, I think many people are struggling to understand the reason why we've signed him. And as I said, I think the reason why we have signed him is to be that impact off the bench and to help Alfie May score goals. So I'm not writing off Tedic. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. It's just good that we were able to bring in that striker. You know, we needed that extra cover up front due to the injuries that we've suffered. So there is our transfer business for the 2023-24 season. Overall, like I said at the start, I think all things considering, I think we have done fairly well. I think we've been able to bring in players that, you know, fit the bill in terms of what we want in terms of League One quality. I think we'd have to say towards the end of the window, though, it seems like we've gone with quantity over quality, which, as I said, all things considering, is fairly decent. You know, I didn't expect us to do really any business whatsoever towards the end of the window due to us sacking our manager, Dean Holden. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is that we have filled the gaps in the squad. Most of the gaps anyway. I think if I had one criticism, I don't know why we've not signed another left-back. I'm not really that confident in having Terrell Thomas as Tyre Eden's cover in the left-back department. I'm not massively sold on that. I would rather a natural option in that position. But I think besides that, we have been able to fill the gaps in. We've been able to, you know, get the squads, you know, fairly decent in terms of depth. We've got numbers there. But like I said, quantity over quality, and it could be, I mean, we could be wrong with this. We could be very, very wrong. We're on paper. This is me going off paper anyway. But like I said on Twitter, I was very frustrated, or X should I say. I'm still calling it Twitter. Stupid. Anyway, off topic. I said this on social media. I got very frustrated with the people that were criticising our deadline day signings and our window in general. Ultimately, we need to judge these players through our own eyes. These players are putting on this shirt, and we need to judge them for what they do wearing this badge. That is all we can do. We need to get behind the players. We need to see if they can offer that quality, and we need to get behind them. That is it for this video, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, can you possibly leave a like, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're notified of every time I upload a new video. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about our transfer window? Let me know in the comments what you think about our new recruits. What do you guys think about our departures? Did we let anyone go that we should have kept? Do you think we missed out on someone? Where do you think we should have strengthened that we didn't? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Tyler Rolinson. Have a nice day, and I am sure I will see you all very shortly for our video about our new manager. Once again, another video about a new manager. I've done so many of these over the years, but it looks very likely, well, we're definitely going to be doing one in the near future, but it looks very likely that it's going to be very soon. So stay tuned for that. Take it easy, stay safe, and I'll see you all then.